The Widow from Scranton by Ludwig Bemelmans. Frau Bach has a brother, and he has a son who is a riveter in the Navy Yard, but is not a sailor. He lives at our house and has a little car. I know his father, who is a barber and is an old gentleman, very fat, with very light blue eyes. The father's name is Lawrence Schilling, and the son's Eddie. It is perhaps from working with a riveting gun that Eddie has a strange way of speaking. He chops the air in a quick move with his right hand, which travels back and forth at the height of his chest the moment he starts saying anything. If he is mad or intent, which often happens, and the chops are shorter and faster, he does that even when we drive, holding the steering wheel with his left hand, while with the right he upsets the air. He calls me Luddy, and he always seems to be mad. Just now, he has a piece of steel in his right eye. He says that happens all the time, and they are going to pull it out with a magnet, and then he gets a fortnight off and will take me along up to their farm in Pennsylvania. Mr. Schilling has a frugal chicken farm near a place called Mayfield. When the steel was removed, we drove up. It was very cold, but Eddie is a tough, hard person. When we had to leave a good highway and turn into side roads that led to his father's house, he lost the contour of the road in a place where the wind had evened out the snow. Eddie got out, and with his bare hands and without gloves, shoveled the snow away, and we both pushed the car a little, and it was on the road again. He never said a word until he was in the car. His fingers did not seem to be cold because he kept on talking and chopping the air again, as he had done all the way up. He has mostly talked about a woman with 2 children, a widow who lived in a house which he pointed out to me along the road, and has since moved to Scranton, but sometimes in the summer comes back here. He has been in love with her, and when he speaks of her he says either the widow or the widow from Scranton. It's a very long story, and he has repeated the details of it several times. Mr. Schilling could see us far away because there is nothing around his house except a long chicken barn and a few lilac bushes. The landscape is very beautiful. The property is on a high plateau, and around it in a ring and far away are hills that seem almost mountainous. It's a little warm and friendly house. It has thin walls, and the oven must be kept going all day and night. The windows are clean with white curtains. In the kitchen, at a window, is the barber chair, and on the sill bottles of different tonics, brushes, and combs. The first thing Mr. Schilling wants to do is cut my hair. He cannot shave me yet, as I have no beard. He makes a joke about this. He says I have to rub chicken manure and chocolate on my upper lip, the chicken manure inside, the chocolate outside. One pulls and the other pushes. He laughs very long at this joke, and then he cuts my hair. He tells me some of the great people whose hair he has cut. He is very proud of his work. Mrs. Schilling is a silent wife, but with a shrill voice, worried. Her little eyes wander around from the oven to the little pantry. She has asked Eddie 5 times to get some water outside while I am in the barber chair. He says, get it yourself. But finally, when he is through reading, he takes the pail and goes out. Eddie also has a dog here, a sad loose animal, a setter. Its name is Gurley, and this dog slips up on him like a rug and tries to cover him all over, and while doing this moans with affection and licks his face. After much wiggling, the dog is very big. It finally succeeds in sitting on Eddie with its head over his face. I can see this in a mirror, and the dog moans more like someone with a heavy weight on him. Down in the cellar are rows of preserves that Mrs. Schilling makes in the summer: pickles, tomatoes, chopped up sour things, pears, and apples. Rows on rows of this, and in a corner coal and firewood, and 3 barrels of a terrible drink called elderberry wine. It is sweet sour, and contracts the lips so one cannot whistle, and I was given a big glass of it when I came in. It gets dark early, and we have a very good dinner, and fine apple strudel afterwards. Also a cigar for me, and Mr. Schilling goes down for another bottle of the sour elderberry wine. He is going to brew some beer next week. In the living room is some furniture of a kind that seems to be cut out with a jigsaw, and the grain of the wood is polished up in some varnish that is very bad in color, and looks like dark mustard. After dinner, and Mrs. Schilling has brought everything to the table and sat with us, but said nothing, Mr. Schilling goes over to his easy-chair. It is a curious piece of machinery. He bought it out of the catalogue and loves it very much. It has a lever on the side, and when one sits in it and pulls that lever, it folds back like an operating table. And when it is that way, Mr. Schilling talks up to the ceiling. The moment he was in the chair, Gurley jumped up, and he scratched the dog behind the ears and talked about his military service. He did his service in Dresden, and is also very fond of the King of Saxony. He speaks, as if praying, of the Kaiser who rode past him in a review. Then he pulls the lever, the dog jumps away, and the chair falls into another shape with a loud bang and stands him up. This is very funny, and to show me how it works, Mr. Schilling sits down again, pulls, and is laid flat. Before Gurley can jump, bang, he stands on his feet again. Then I have to try it. And after this, Mr. Schilling walks over to a closet and takes out a broom, to show me that he has not forgotten the manual of arms. He commands himself. Present arms, right shoulder, arms, left shoulder, arms. And when he is through with this, he dismisses himself and puts the broom away. In this room, on the wall, over the mechanical easy-chair, hangs a picture of Heidelberg. It is a paper calendar with a pocket under it, on which is written the advertisement of the firm that gave them away. A castle is pressed out into relief and is covered with a glass dust, the color of Lifebuoy soap, and around the castle is foliage. In the middle of the room, over the table, hangs a petroleum lamp. Mr. Schilling turns the light down low. The lamp has one of those artless glass shades that are found on drugstore counters. They are inlaid with many colors. He turns the shade until a red glass is in the light. And now the castle sparkles as it did when it was feverishly illuminated for patriotic purposes. Then Herr Schilling sings Deutschland, Deutschland, über alles, and Roslin aus der Heide, and winds up with an old gramophone with a scratchy record that plays Must I leave my little city. While the music is playing, he fills my glass and his own with elderberry wine. Bottoms up, he says, and drinks it down with me after looking into my eyes and clinking glasses as the code requires. The music plays, and he looks on and on at his castle until 2 tears run down his lovely face. He does not wipe them away, and I have to go out of the room because it is so sad and lonely. Eddie has been reading a Western story all the time, with his dog moaning and sitting on him out in the kitchen, and his mother has washed and dried the dishes and is now looking through eggs and wrapping them. When it was time to go to bed, we walked upstairs into a room with a slanting floor, a low ceiling, and 2 iron beds. It was icy here, the beds moist and cold. I had many covers, and Eddie went to bed with his warm underwear on, although he seems to be so tough. The moon was full and shining into the room, and its light was colder still. I could not sleep, and neither could Eddie, and we talked. In a short while, Eddie sat up and started again with his widow all over at the beginning, which I knew so well. He has difficulty in telling how beautiful she was, because he knows only a few words, or does not wish to use the right ones. He described the size of her eyes by making a circle with his index finger and thumb, and the firmness of her bosoms by making both his open palms tremble about a foot in front of him. He also told how frequently and well he made love with her, and he said that with army words. He was with her every day, and sometimes all of the night, sometimes from Friday to Monday, and one day she asked him to give her some money to have her hair done in Scranton in a beauty parlor. "I like you the way you are," he told her. And Eddie, and chopped the air again. "But she wanted $10, see? So I gave her $10, and she goes to Scranton to have her hair fixed. When she comes back, she says to me, 'Eddie, how do you like me this way? How do I look?' 'You look like hell,' I says." He says this with lips drawn back, tearing the words sharply with his tongue and teeth. And he likes it so much, he repeats, "You look like hell," I says to her. "But Lundy," he continued in soft tones, "she was a pippin, beautiful like nothing you ever laid eyes on, with her hair done up in curls. Eddie showed the curliness of her hair with his hands as if he were tickling the back of someone in front of himself. Well, then Eddie had to go away on some work for several months, and while he was away, a man who had been hanging around the window for years with serious intentions and whom Eddie did not like, and who also had a farm, some money, and wanted to take the children and also marry her, which Eddie did not want to do, became her friend. He became so bold because Eddie was away, and also because the widow was now so beautiful with her big eyes and the curls. Eddie, in the meantime, saved his money and worked very hard, and he bought himself a new suit, shoes, hat, and necktie, and when he came back, the people told him about the widow and the other man. Eddie wanted to go right over and beat him and the widow up, and then he thought differently about it. She was not worth it. No woman is, he told me, and he stayed home. But he planned his revenge. On the way up here, whenever Eddie came to this part of the story, he would drive to the side of the road and stop the car. Now he got out of bed and went on. There was a dance in the next village to which he knew the widow and this man would go. It was called a social to celebrate the 4th of July. And Eddie, dressed in collar and necktie and new suit with the straw hat, went to the social. Eddie was very worried that I might not have a clear picture of this. He showed me the suit hanging under a curtain and described at length the hall in which this party took place, how it was decorated with flags and streamers and balloons, and how it was illuminated, and how everybody was there, with music and refreshments, all the people in the neighborhood sitting around the room along the wall on benches. To show this, he runs around the little room on the sides of his feet, because the floor is very cold. Here was the orchestra, there was the door, and along the wall the people, all the people. Do you get it, Lundy? He waited until the party was well underway, and then walked in with his new suit. The music stopped, and everybody wondered what would happen. The widow laughed like this, ha ha, and walked over to him. Hello, Eddie, she says to me, like nothing happened. Hello, Eddie. Now, Luddy, he went on. Here I was in the middle of the room with everybody looking, and she was there, beautiful